what would your advice be to someone who is at 5 to 10 lakhs a month and they want to scale this further?
People won't like it. Take Narayan Murthy's advice. People will laugh at it, will say all of that. It is fucking gold dust. If you do 100 push-ups a day, you will have better body definition than someone who does no push-ups a day.
Right.
So if you work 14 hours a day, as said, you will be better than somebody who works 7 hours a day or 9 hours a day or whatever. The talk of hard work, it puts people off. I would say, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you have no choice but to work hard or else you will be eaten. To be an anomaly, you have to act like one. When everyone zigs, you have to zag. Only way you can do that is if you put incremental amount of effort. So just work hard. Whatever you're doing, work hard.
We wanted to sort of position this episode for anyone who is building in the agency space, particularly in content, but even otherwise. We're sort of at that place where we have started to slowly outgrow being just a freelancer. On paper, we have quote-unquote agencies, but clearly doing my research, I know this is nowhere close to being an agency, right? What we want this episode to be is essentially asking you how you have sort of gone through that journey yourself when you were where we are. Could you talk to us through that journey of, hey, when you started, I'm sure you were doing something yourself or maybe with like one or two people, right? What was that inflection point where we're like, hey, I need to hire one more person, or I'm getting a lot of inbound, or like something is happening where I need to sort of grow more than just myself?
I was sold on the idea of entrepreneurship when I was in college. Entrepreneurship meant to build a company, to build a team. So from day one, the thought process always was, how do I build a collection of people who will come together and work? So for me, even on day one, when we started Wirality, by the way, 2017 in Feb, I went and hired two freelancers, one art, one copy. And then I had a friend of mine who was also like exploring entrepreneurship. So he said, you know what, I'm not doing anything now. I'll work with you. I will try to build this. It didn't work out. He sort of dropped out later. But from day one, we were 4 people. I was always looking at from the lens of how to build a company, not to see how to build a solopreneurship or how to make money. In fact, I remember 3 months in, one of those freelancers that we hired itself asked me, saying, funny enough, I should say that it's Pratik actually, the guy who you guys have spoken to. Pratik asked me saying, why are you doing this? You could just, you outsource the work to freelancers, take up these clients for yourself, do it as a one-man show. You'll make 4 times the money. I said, yeah, I would. But you're not trying to make money per se, right? I think you're trying to build a larger organization that will outlast you, hopefully, or will have a long stint in the industry and create a name and legacy for itself. So if you think that way, then you will position everything else, or you make every decision towards that goal. It's a good thing you asked, because I think today I find a lot of people who are doing it to make money and who are doing it because for whatever reason, I think the world has also changed. In fact, I was talking about this with somebody recently saying, I'm not seeing enough early 20-year-olds or late teenagers starting companies. They might crack a product, they might crack a solution, they might build influence on social media, which in itself is like a business today. But not enough people are getting obsessive about entrepreneurship and solving bigger problems. Like if you look at the number of early 30 founders that are there today, like guys in Zepto, for example, are an exception, right? But there aren't enough of those, which was there probably when I was growing up in that age. So I think it's a good shift. So this is down to how you're looking at it. So if you want to build an agency, then from day one, start thinking that way. And then how do you build it is just by starting. That's it.
Generally, agency people who would want to start an agency also, they tend to get into this hassle of doing everything, right? When it comes to that, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do everything types. I don't think that is not a way to go forward as an agency in any scale. But how do you figure out, because once you start, you're trying to figure out, okay, what is that one niche that I will really excel at, but I'm still trying to sort of figure out, acha, ye hit karega. But how do you figure out ki this is something that I should be doing in like a long-term view?
So the long term, I think you can keep it aside, because once you start a company, realities of running a P&L come in. Then you will invariably get into a position where you'll start taking work because you need to keep the system moving.
Payroll,
right? Yeah,
payroll
exactly. Right. So before that, I think, I was very clear when I started that social media is my strength. I understood social media. I understood, for example, I understood platform. I understood TG on a platform. I understood their habits on the platform. And by extension of that, I could reverse engineer what they would like to see. Right. And I figured that out. But For example, what I knew I didn't know really well is how do you create a brand? How do you design its identity? For example, we spoke about Bonami. I'm its first investor, right? But when they wanted a logo and design done, I said, listen, I know somebody. I'll put them on to you. You guys work together and figure it out, right? I didn't want to do it myself because I knew I was not good at it. And my thought process has been, you have to be good at one thing and go really deep to the point where you're the best in the world. You have to think like that. And anything else that you think there are people out there who are better than you, like offline. We didn't do offline for the longest time. For the last 18 months, we've been like maybe starting to dabble our feet into it and see if we can take up small projects and do it. But we were clear in the beginning, digital is our strength, social media is our strength. Extension of social media became media buying and performance marketing. That became a strength. Extension of all of that became creating video content. That became a strength. Then there were small pieces that came out of that, handling influencers, doing some amount of, say, a large-scale production, etc., etc. But those are secondary services or tertiary. You have to be clear that as a founder or as a group or founding team, what is your core strength? And if everything goes away, and if there's only the core team tomorrow left to deal with problems, can they get you out of it through their core skill that they have? So that was my thought process. So we built ourselves out that way as an organization. So the core is social media and performance marketing today, and video as an extension of growth. But everything around that just revolves around it. I wouldn't say is our strength. So this identity or this understanding I had, from there on it's easy to build.
Very interesting.
Saying no is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you want to make money, and then that just it loses focus. You have to only do
also
one
because
thing.
early days you don't know if you're good enough, what your strengths are. So see, this again traces back to that self-awareness factor we spoke about, right? So I try to apply that in everything I do. So at the earlier you figure things out for yourself, it helps. Like for example, our head of creative, he was part of the founding team. He left and because he wanted to become a screenwriter. So he went and worked at the AIB. He worked with a lot of OTTs. He wrote about, I think, 4 or 5 web series. He explored that and then he came back because he was in that zone where he wanted to figure. Whereas our head of strategy has been with us since the same time, as much as I have been. And he's very clear, or he had a goal from the beginning that I want to be the best digital marketer in the world. Like he wanted to be best on platform. He wanted to learn media buying, performance, etc. And he just doubled down on that. And then over time, he started to expand and grow. So that one singular focus as an organization, and if people who are part of the core team also resonate with it, then it becomes super easy.
A couple of threads that I want to pull on. First is you mentioned that you like when you're starting out, you don't know if you're good enough, right? Is there like a litmus test to knowing when you're good enough? Is it that when you're getting a lot of inbound or when you're able to, let's say, convert certain KPIs for your clients?
So I played a lot of cricket, okay, and my coach, he was a former Indian cricketer. He would ask us, when do you know you're playing well? Like, you guys have an answer for that? From a sport perspective, I'm assuming you guys watch a bit of cricket.
Yeah. I watch cricket.
When do you know you're playing well?
When I would say when it comes to the batting sense, when people assume that you will score this much when you get into the pitch, I think that's when you know you are playing well.
What about you?
So I play a lot of basketball.
Oh, fair.
And for me, I know I'm playing well when it just feels like I'm in that flow state, right? Where it doesn't feel like I'm putting so much effort to get a reward, right? I'm just like, hey, I'm just doing my thing. I'm in the moment and things are just happening. It's like butter smooth.
So my answer is, when do you know you're playing well? When you feel good. Simple. So if you feel it, you're good enough. This is what I think people confuse like everything in life with. They try to set these external benchmarks and external goal setting, and then you're trying to work to that yardstick, which is not yours. So then it's always a battle. I think that's a big problem too, which again, it's all inwards. You have to look at it and say, are you able to go back home and sleep well? Are you confident when a brief comes your way? When you get it, like I had this thing that I would ask myself, which is how many marketing rooms do I go into where I'm comfortable? If I'm uncomfortable, I shouldn't be there because that's the sort of room I'm not still good enough to be. But if I am comfortable, that means that that's my zone of play where I can play and dominate. So this is, I think, a good sort of litmus test, I would say.
If let's say you were advising or you were back in your mid-20s starting an agency, right? Would there be like a certain growth curve that you would look at and know that, hey, I'm going down the right point, let's say, I don't know, doubling your business every year, or if you know that, hey, I have more leads that I can handle, I know that, okay, I'm going in the right direction.
I was very bad at goal setting initially. So I wouldn't say the first 2 years we really had any goals. And that also was a problem because I did lose a few key people because they couldn't see vision. And it's a reality because I was too young and I didn't know. Reality is even I started out because I needed to put food on the table. That's the reality. So there was no real grand vision in terms of where you want to go. There was some idea, but it wasn't documented down to beyond the realities we faced in life. So it took me some time. Then I started to set goals. I think one thing that really helped me, and it's an insight from a friend of mine, which is you have to set goals for yourself and extension of that the team, and set them to limit them to 3 goals. The only rule that you should follow is that when you write down that goal, there should be a number in it. For example, you can say a revenue goal, or you can do some other format of qualitative goal that you want to achieve, but then make sure there's a timeline to it. So the timeline is defined by the number. So the goal has to be measurable. If you have measurability, then you can hold yourself accountable to it. So somewhere in 2019, I bought in this approach, and I think from there the growth has been far more significant, far better. And I think this is another important thing to note, because I run my own company. I can set my own goals. So I push the team. I set some challenging goals for myself, and then with those goals, you're trying to ensure that you just hit those. Everything else is inconsequential. So you don't have to be bothered about what your competition is doing, how many awards they're winning, how many clients they're winning, what their revenue is. It's inconsequential, other than for you to get a grip of the market and for you to then curate your own goals. So that's something that I've done, and it's really helped. And I think that clarity helps top down.
Do you think the creative agency space is zero sum? Like if there are 3 agencies, one agency doing really well, does that mean that the other 2 cannot do well, or is it that everyone can do
No,
well?
I think we're still in that era, or that phase of advertising, marketing, brand building, where we had a wave of entrepreneurship, right? So that happened maybe in the 2000s and late 2000s and 2010s. I think entrepreneurship was really the cool thing. Post that, I think as a function of that, a lot of supplementary services also sprung up. Marketing, advertising, I think was one of those, because so many businesses are being created, so people also needed services. Now I think the evolution of that will happen. I think there needs to be smarter, sharper businesses that need to come out, and as a function of which, even the advertising, digital marketing, agency business will also evolve, where people will start realizing what type of an agency they are. I think today there is a little bit of a lack of understanding there. Everybody who serves any brand thinks they're the agency and they're playing with each other, which is not the reality. I'm not today competing with an Ogilvy. Ogilvy's business model is very different from what we do. They make 80-90% of their revenues on mass media advertising, which are through TV, print, etc. Things that we do from a digital lens is looked as tactical. They wouldn't be in that market. But probably another agency would probably be more closer to us, maybe like a Shebang for that matter, right? Or an FCB Connect for the example. So I think understanding of this is important. Then you'll know that the market within each of these services actually is large enough for having multiple players. One of the things about our line of work is always you have to look at what's going to be the thing for the future. So like what is going to be the next big service in the next 5 years. So if you optimize for that, then I think you will continuously forever happen to have a good market share. You'll never get outdated. Yeah. The people who struggle are the ones who are romantic about how they did things 10 years ago.
Very true. I think you have to see, if you have to build an agency, you have to see the market that's going to come in the future, rather than like figuring out if something is big right now. I don't think that's the way to get into. Whatever is going to get big in the future is what you get into, right? Do you have any predictions as to like 5 years down the line, what would be something that will be like really big?
I mean, everyone is saying AI, and I think I'm already starting to see it. But I think there'll be lesser people in teams and agencies, and they will get more work done. So we had a problem in advertising, which is for the longest time, the strategy was often to throw bodies at the problem. So if you add more people, you will solve the problem. That was the thought process, which doesn't always work. And I think with AI now, it's a good way to sort of optimize for that, for sure. And I want to say that a lot of things will get automated, but to be honest, one of the problems that's there in, like we were talking about it, right? Like creativity versus publishing are two very different things. Anyone who starts a page and starts putting out content thinks that they are in advertising. Sure, it is a format of advertising, but it's not the advertising, right? I don't wear Adidas because they bombarded me with 10 ads in a
Instagram
AI or Instagram, or they produce 35 pieces of reels a month. Not really, right? It's brand building. So, and that is something that, to be honest, comes with wisdom. Like you have to spend a lot of years in the world of advertising, communication, brand building to learn what brand building is. Then you sort of figure out how you can optimize and use all these tools and AI for that matter to scale services. Today, if someone is starting out, like we were talking about people who learn how to run pages on their own, right? If they use AI, they will use it to the skills that they have. They can never learn how to sort of name a brand, create its identity, give it a persona, what archetype should that be. Unless you have done that work, how do you know it? So I think that is going to change. I think, but AI will make that information flow faster. So everybody in the organization will know everything easily, depending on who on top is using what. As a function of which, I think you will move faster. Like we have started doing that. A lot of the pitch work, which takes a lot of time traditionally, today can be automated through, because you know what you're trying to present to a client. So it's all about the right prompts, the right questions you ask for market research data, then you put them together. Design is also simplified. Today with Canva, I think you can do things that otherwise would take you 2 days. Like I remember stories of my colleagues in other agencies who probably spent 3 nights in the office making a case study deck or a pitch deck or whatever. All that is gone. That's like, so efficiency will come in, which is good. I think work-life balance is a big thing that was missing in advertising. That will come back. As a function of which you'll be able to do more quality work. So, but the market, I think, will continue to be what it is. People who go to Ogilvy will continue to go to Ogilvy. People who go to the next agency down the street who you heard of through a referral will go to those guys also. I think on a macro level, I don't know how much of the market share that way will shift. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of disruption, but everyone's innovating. So I don't think AI is this tool that someone found and only they have access to. Everyone has it.
Right. Can we talk some numbers? Can you tell us if, let's say, someone were to start an agency and run it for like 10 years, right? What kind of growth can they expect?
This is down to how good you are at it. Simple. Like if you know how to make money as a freelancer, do you know how to do the same with a team? Because you then won't be doing it yourself. You'll be getting it done with a team or working with a team. So this is just coming down to how, can you do it and how good you are at it, honestly. There's no ceiling to it. You can make as much money as you want. I mean, there are agencies out there who are maybe operating on 1% profit after tax. There are others who are operating at 10, others are operating at 15, there are ones who are operating at 20. So that's down to how skilled you are in running that, right? I think the more important thing is figuring out what is your DNA. Are you the kind of person who wants to create a large team and get consumed in the workings of it and that style of entrepreneurship, or are you okay being a freelancer earning 10 lakhs a month or whatever number that is? Those two are very different DNAs. And I think you have to be prepared for that lifestyle that comes with it. For example, I think I would make a lot more money as an solopreneur. 10x of what I do probably right now, I think.
Right.
Personally, right? Not as a company, but take
like,
home
say,
what I do.
Consulting and other things.
Right? But I don't think I would be happy with that lifestyle. I don't think that's gratifying enough for me. So as a function, I don't want to do it. I want to focus more on maybe building a team, a business and all of that stuff. So this comes down to what you want to build and what you think you relate to better. But sky's the limit. You can do as much as you want. It's just down to how much effort you're willing to put in. If you're running an agency, this is what I think is a right format. If you make 100 rupees, put 50 back into payroll, put 25 into operational cost, capital expenditure, any kind of innovation experiments you want to run, and put 25% nicely tucked away in a bank. And operate on this model. So every time you acquire a client, and if you think that 50% can't supplement your payroll, then that's an account you shouldn't take on, right? And that's how you maintain that profitability. So this is an old school format. If you speak to people who have been trained on business operations on mainline agencies like a JWT or any of these holding companies, they would always say that they would be given this course saying that this is how you control economics on an account. So you have to also look at that way. If you can do 25% profit in an advertising business, it's great, honestly. Like it's not easy to do. So if you can achieve that, nothing like it.
Are there any such insights about the business of it that you could share?
Some services I feel will be high top line turnover, low profits.
Could we define what top line is?
Top line is basically all the revenue, all the invoicing that you do. A bottom line is purely agency services or agency fees, right? So for example, if you run Facebook ads for somebody and say it's 1 lakh, you're paying 1 lakh to Facebook. So that flows through you. So that 1 lakh gets accounted on your top line. but then your bottom line on that is how much you earn as a commission or your flat retainer, whatever your model is, but what you earn out of that. So you have to figure that. So the agency business has to be run on bottom line. It is a bottom line driven brick and mortar old school business model. People get consumed in the top line saying that we are doing X and Y, but then that's a little scary too, because if you don't keep tabs on it, you could get consumed by that glory and then not look at your basics at the bottom.
I think this is similar to influencer marketing agencies, right? Let's say if I'm an influencer marketing agency, I would say that my revenue is like 5 crores, but like 4.9 crores of it has gone to influencers. I have kept like 10 lakhs. So technically my revenue is 10 lakhs.
Yeah, but that's the case with all services business. Like that's just the model of it.
Yeah, fortunately, unfortunately, it's the same thing.
Even in video production, like if you look at it, you would do a campaign for 3 crore, you might do an ad, let's say, but you are making a 10% agency fee on it, 30L, right? That's all you do. But of course, the transaction is so high, so that then you make it. So some of it is a scale game, which is why holding companies did so well back in the day, because they didn't really have much competition or independent agency eating share, which has changed now. Now there's a lot of people coming into the market and then taking business away from the big guys. So there's a lot of disruption. But coming back to the point, you have to build it on bottom line. You have to identify services that are good for bottom line and services that are good for top line. And the ones also, it's important to know that sometimes you get consumed in top line. And I know tons of media agencies out there just to keep the relationship with the media vendors, because how the principle of media works is, if you give a newspaper, for example, X amount of business a year, then over time you could bargain and get your rates down, and you will still make money on the margin. You can't do that on Facebook and Google, because Facebook, Google work on biddable platforms, right? So you will have to work on what the platform rates are. But if you go to any magazine, any newspaper, you have the leverage on doing that. So more media you do, better rates you get. It's a wholesale game. Let's put it that way. Simply put, right? So then to do so, a lot of people just start taking media business on zero commission. They'll say, I'll make the money on the third account that I pick up. First two, I wouldn't make money. That gets a little tricky. I feel that's a hamster wheel game. Somewhere the wheel will break. So it's important for you to trace out these things. But for most people, I think that might be listening and might be probably from your world, would probably looking at smaller gigs, right? Who probably are managing pages, growing in YouTube channels, doing the odd video creation, or maybe running ads for somebody, whatever. I think you have to just figure out how you want to price yourself. And then every time a new client comes, try to increase that price point by 10-15% and see if they're willing to pay. You will learn over time if you have the markets respecting your pricing or not.
So if it's a good service, then the increase in price is always justified, is what you would say?
I would say a lot of people even put bad services and they charge a lot. Like, there's no there's no real rule and law to this, to be honest, right?
Okay.
And that's see, we don't have an MRP in our line of work.
True.
You can charge 1x to a client, and then the other client you can do 2x. There's nobody stopping you from it. But you should have a baseline saying that this is what I require to keep things afloat. Coming back, right, I was very clear saying I want to start a company. I, in the beginning itself, maybe in the third month, went and took an office when there was no need to do an office, right? So assume we were at that time making a lakh probably, but 95 was probably the cost, for example. Like that was how we were structured. Why? Because we're obsessed about building it. So we didn't care, and we said we'll now make things work. But I was very clear that a certain price point, below this I can't take an account. It will create issues internally. So we still have that.
When you were starting out, were most of your lead gen inbound? Because now you mentioned it was inbound. So how did you kind of build that up?
So I knew some businesses and some business owners, so I went directly to them. For example, so initially when we were starting out, we were working with smaller businesses, right? Like hyperlocal ones. So an F&B became a great place, like a brewery or a restaurant, because they were hyperlocal and they had brand name, and then you worked with them, you would get something better. Over and above that, so also the other thing is you only know consumer brands, right? B2C. You don't know who the B2B are because you haven't done enough research. So I would look at somebody that I know of, like for example, I knew a good friend of mine who was friends with somebody who was from the family that ran and owned Corner House. So I put in a word, I said, can you get me a meeting? And by then I had built up my portfolio. I knew somebody who knew somebody at Toit. I did a meeting, but they were very kind in saying, hey, we work with someone, we're very happy. I said, cool, no problem. Similarly, I would just do cold calls. And I think some things also you have to hack, right? Like I keep telling, so we signed with one F&B business. I won't name them, but from the heart of the town. And then we started working with them and I took the handover from them. Okay. from the other agency. So they gave me the login credentials and this and that. So then I learned that this is agency. So I went and looked at all their clientele. So they had a lot of clients in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai, etc. A lot of F&B stuff. And I got the Facebook password, I got Instagram password, and I got some other password. I looked at the logins and they were all the same password. So I tried my luck. So I went on their clientele. I looked at the logos listed. I found the Instagram. Okay. I used the same password.
Right.
And for fun, I was logging in and out of their accounts. And this is back in the day when Instagram wouldn't tell you that
Yeah,
there's a
that there was a
account,
login.
right? So I would log in. So then it became easy. I went after every single client of theirs. I was in Bangalore and I logged in. I went into Instagram. I downloaded the report. It's hack.
Analytics.
Whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I did it. So then I would analyze the numbers, whatever, but I wouldn't make a report or anything, but I was just looking at the numbers and I would go and meet those business owners. A couple of them, to be honest, I'm still friends with because of that, even though we don't work with, but that first interaction was like, hey, I know this about your business. So I would just do cold physical meetings, face to face, because I think my strength lies in me sitting across the table and talking. Not on phone, not on cold emails, not on DM. I mean, I think that also works. Not saying it doesn't. It depends on how you craft it.
Again, coming back to like what makes you feel good.
Yeah, and not that. I think what you feel is your best skill. Like California Burrito, I worked with Bert. So with Bert, I got his number from some other agency that pitched and failed. Right? So somehow I got the number. I said, listen, I want to do a collab with these guys. That's the reason I said I got number. I called him up and I said, hey, I love your product. I generally do. I was obsessed with California Burrito. Every other day we would eat and stuff. So I said, I do this. I want an opportunity. Can you give me half an hour? I'll come and pitch. I think he was in a good mood. So he said, okay. So I went and met him. 25 minutes of our chat and he and I argued about how corn is a very bad ingredient in his food. That's it. For 25 minutes, because I genuinely love the product. So when I told him, listen, it just messes the taste, it spoils my stomach, I don't like it, I think you should remove it. He's like, why? Then we went back and forth, 25 minutes went by. And then he was like, oh, so you know what, why don't you send across your work? So then I drafted a nice little email, put down our work, very limited at that time, and sent it. He gave us a chance. I worked with him for about 5 months at that time. So that happened like just out of putting yourself out there. And see, the thing with me was I'm generally passionate about business. So when I meet business owners, I really like it. I feel I strike a better chord with business owners than with marketing heads. The coming down to the fact, I think if you are genuinely curious and obsessed with your own business, then you are the best salesman for it. So
Right.
you could get out and put yourself out there. But at the same time, I know a lot of people who don't do this and who do cold emails, and they're also very successful.
It depends on what is your mode of reaching out. Like, what are you comfortable with? Because I know a few people who like will not work if they go meet physically, but they're great at writing emails. They'll send brilliant messages. Like, I can't send a message. I am very good like on a face-to-face thing, but bad in sort of writing
Exactly.
emails.
This comes down to self-awareness
Yeah.
again. You play your best hand.
Right. We go and pitch to like a client, and generally what I've seen the biggest mistake happen is you get on like a wrong client. So how do you sort of set your own expectations and make sure like you are getting on board a good client that will actually have like a long term,
I want to
relation
add
with?
on to this. What we have noticed quite a bit is that if the service is the same for, let's say, client A and client B, the results can be drastically different. Not because we are doing something different, but because the way that the client is responding to that service, right? Or how seriously they are taking you, or how patient they are, or how impatient they are. So if having worked for 8 years and probably hundreds of clients, right? If you were to sort of define what a good client looks like, what do they have to do to enable the agency to sort of help them win, right? What would that be?
So for every fledgling agency business, you have to figure this out for yourself. But I think the key is to look at it and like a relationship. What do you do when you are on a first date? What are you looking for, right? If you want to build a long-term relationship, right? Yeah. And you're trying to see if you and them look at the end outcome of marketing the same way. Even within that, there are a lot of variables, but are you able to agree and disagree on common things? That would be the first level at a basic thing of, of whatever. At the same time, now you also have to be very clear on identifying the type of person you're serving, because I feel every brand is represented by people and then their personality plays a big role in the outcome of that relationship. I think what people do make a mistake of, and this happens if you're early in your career or if you're very late, which is you become rigid and say this is my process. Now you can do that, but it's also about, like, sometimes I keep kidding and saying it's like getting a kid to eat the medicines right at home. You have to convince them and say this is the right for you,
Have
long
this
term will be
dance
better,
that,
yeah, do whatever you need to do, and then get them to agree. It's a bit like that too, and I think you have to you have to have that ability to read. For us, I think certain things have worked, which is I keep saying, what is the stage of business? Are they 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100? Very important to define. I genuinely feel for agencies, it is difficult for agencies to build businesses that are on the 0 to 1 base stage, because that is high founder involvement phase of a business, which requires people who on one end are absolutely passionate about what they're doing, on the other end are not. So if you're working with a very large organization, it's very transactional. It is a lot more easier to do that because there's no personal emotion involved, and it's all about getting the work done. So everybody aligns on it, and they also pay better because budgets are larger, etc. 1 to 10 is tricky. That's, I think, where you need that call, because a client you're working with, in 6 months the business can really scale and they can lap over to the 10 to 100 stage, and then the founder's no longer involved and there's somebody else, versus the other side where they're not doing so well and then they have to cut back. It can happen both ways. So it's important for you to understand or to take a call on where you want to be in that stage, right? Now this also comes with the services. Now if you're selling a service that you're very good at, you're super confident, you will align them to what you want them to do. If you're also experimenting with a service that you don't have much of an experience on, then it's harder. Then you will also go with the flow and see where the outcome is. In that, either you're the casualty or the client is. That can happen, right?
But there is some casualty happening.
Yeah, they could. So again, this comes down to how do you want to position yourself as an agency. This is again a mistake a lot of us do, which is if we were to ask each other of our organizations and then what is a brand of our organization, a lot of them will struggle because they've never built it. So you don't know how you're positioned. Now there's a fundamental problem. Then you're just operating on the back of P&L. Today you need to make money, you will take this client, and tomorrow you will take this client. So that has to come, all of this has to come together. But there are certain checks you can do, which is what stage of business they're in, who's the person you're dealing with, who's behind that person, what is their collective experience or acumen that they have, what is the past work that they've done, what is the future work they want to do, who handled marketing before you for them, and what is the problems in those relationship, what worked, what didn't. So there's a bit of that. Like, to be honest, it's very much like a relationship.
This is a great question to have. This is like write down these questions and like move forward.
Yeah, right. You have to answer those. Right. Then comes the other piece, which is you have to have a very strong brief taking process, which I think a lot of people don't. For example, I have my own, which is I always start by asking what is the business goal? Like, as a company, what do you want to do? Now break that down into marketing. Then let's get into the granular details of whether it's a brand problem, whether it's a distribution problem, whether it's a tactical problem, whatever it might be. So you need to spend a lot of time pre-sign up, right, to understand. And the reality or the challenge you'll be faced with is if there are questions that nobody can answer. Then you have to make it very clear that, hey, there is a question, you're not able to answer it, let's explore it together. So then you're able to set an equal sort of footing with the client, and then you are become more of a partner, less vendor, and then you're able to take that relationship forward. So that initial trust building, vetting to see if you guys are best match in the long term, all of those has to happen in that pre-pitch, pre-sales process. So that, I would say, whoever is leading that function for the agency, once your cold emails are done, once your initial bravado of 25-minute conversations are done, you need to spend time on solving for that. So I feel a lot of the problems is agencies are obsessed with acquisition of new business, right? So they do everything under the world to get acquisition. It's like getting a reel to trend, but you're not looking at retention.
Yeah.
And I feel agency business grows purely on retention. Yeah. It's a retention-driven business. And if you look at larger ones like Dairy Milk, right? Dairy Milk works with Ogilvy. They've been working with Ogilvy even before I was born. And they were still working. Sure, in bits and pieces, some other agency will come and do a project, but they're married to them.
Yeah. LTV is off the charts.
Yeah, right? So that's what you require. You need to figure out how you build long-term business. And I think it again comes down to whether you want to be tactical execution agency or a long-term brand building and a partner to a client. Both require different approach. If you're execution, you will get in, quickly do your work, get out. If you are a long-term brand building, then you have to be there for them. And on this probably you will do volume and do a lot of revenue, whereas and profit as well. Or here you will do smaller business, but you will get deeper and you'll get into bed with the client for longer period. And as a function, you'll have long-term relationship. Like there's a great story of Apple. Apple's agency was an agency called Chiat Day, right? CHIAT DAY. You know the Think Different campaign?
Yeah.
The square round pegs in a square hole, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most recognizable campaigns of
So
all
do
time
you know the
also.
story of that campaign? It was the agency's branding. He showed it to Jobs. This guy called Lee Clough, I think his name was, the founder of the agency. He showed it to Jobs. Jobs loved it, and he said, "I want that, not a reference. I want
That campaign.
And he borrowed it, and then they made it.
Wow.
So the agency positioning was, we are outliers. We zig when everyone zags. We are counterculture. We are black and white. He just borrowed it.
Very interesting.
So Think Different comes from there.
Yeah. It's a
If you think of it, that's a very nice agency thing. Think
Yeah.
different.
Do you follow Alex Hormozi by any chance? Do you follow like what he talks about
Not
the
as
business
much.
side of things?
No. Little bit here and there if some reel pops up, but not as much. I consume like less of a singular creator now. I consume a lot of industry-wide stuff. Like in general, I like consuming diversity. I think it just helps you. Otherwise, you get very locked in on one type of thinking, and then that has a saturation point at some level or the other. You will outgrow a source of information, news, whatever it might be. And today, to be honest, a lot of them are putting out content because it's a business. So I don't know how much insight is there, to be honest, in that.
one question I had, like, I think the foreign Indian arbitrage. What is your general opinion? Because a lot of people I have heard, like, generally in the small agency space, people say India doesn't pay enough. But what is your take on this?
We were talking about branding, right? For example, I know of an agency that does only 6 projects a year of brand creation. They do research, and the research is very thorough. 6-7 months they take, and then they eventually will give you a brand personality guidelines, and they ended up creating an identity out of that. They charge about between 50 to 75 lakhs for one project, and they do only 6 a year. So there are people out there who are making that sort of money also per client. Right? At the same time, see, the pyramid, it's always a pyramid. Any business you take, it's a pyramid. And even in the pyramid, there's a Pareto principle, which is 20% is eating the 80%. It's always the case. So the top 20 always make the money. And if you're stuck on the bottom, then you will be in that zone, right? You can shift and say, okay, I'll go after international clients. Sure. How much are those? So you might then still make some money, and you're happy that you're making more than the average in India. But the reality is that within that market, is let's say US, imagine how much the top 10 agencies will be making. So there's always a bigger
big compared to India, but you're small compared to
yeah,
US.
right.
Yeah.
So they're outsourcing stuff because it's expensive for them there.
Yeah.
And like you will find even lesser if you go to Africa or somewhere, for example. You'll find creative services that are even cheaper. So this is all like, I think it's relative. You have to decide what you want to do as an end outcome. I've been clear that we should win local before going global. So you have to build. So I'm building with that mindset, and there's enough big clients probably in the city or in the southern part of India or even within India that you can sort of still work with and scale your business and build a very, very profitable business out of. You have to be, again, coming back to the first set of things we discussed, clear about your strength, what you're good at, what you're not good at, position yourself that way, go deeper into it. Once you're really good, the referral network will kick in, and then people will start recommending you. And especially if you're someone who's not a known agency, because for that person who's recommending you from a brand team somewhere, it's like, you know what, I know this agency, you don't know what. Yeah, right? They're damn good at it. Work with them and stuff like that. That starts playing a role, and then you start winning from there. So if you want, but I mean, it again comes down to whether you want to be someone who wants to make money, or you want to be get the reputation that you're very good at your job. Two very different things, which you were talking about too, right?
Yeah.
I think it's money versus legacy. I was talking to Sindhu as well, and that's what he was saying. So many people, like, there are a lot of creative agencies now that we have talked about that are like content agencies that are like suddenly blown up, right? And they're making a lot of money. But then he said something very simple, like breaking down the strategies that they are using. You don't build a legacy business with that, right? You make a lot of money in a short amount of time, but if you want to build something that lasts possibly longer than you can't do it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you asked me this off camera, which is, how do you get there, or how do you know what to do? The only answer is just execute every day. Every day you just have to keep doing. See, the problem, and I think this also is the reason why a lot of people are not entrepreneuring enough, because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very tough. Like scaling a solopreneur business is hard, and it for a person to one individual to a revenue or economics perspective, it makes a lot of sense because you can make significantly more money. But when you're doing it as an organization, and if you have 40, 50, 100, 200 people, then that's that much more challenging, because even in an organization, that pyramid applies. So the top 15 people are the ones who are actually making the difference. Rest of them are just holding the structural whatever positions or whatever. They're just there. They're not really moving that. So it's very, very hard. So the only way to get there is to do as much as you can as soon as you can. So you fast forward your learning curve, and then you're in a position in 2 years to say, okay, now I have enough knowledge to decide that.
Yeah. I think Alex Hormozy has said something. He's like God for me, but he said something that makes so much sense. He
Should
was
have told
like,
me, I would have watched some of his stuff.
he said that how can you figure out to do more, right? Let's say you're sending cold emails or you're going on sales calls and you're doing like 10 emails or 10 calls a day. Can you do more? Can you do 100? Can you do 1,000? Because the minute you start really pressing that gas pedal, that's when you really start sort of accelerating that learning. From what you're telling, it's very clear, especially with that example of, hey, like something has gone wrong, but it's okay, I'll get to it 2 hours later, right? You're working on your business, not in it. Has it always been the case? Because mostly when people start off, like the position that we are in right now, we're working in the business. I know that if something goes wrong, my guy doesn't know how to fix it, I will have to step in and be like, okay, we have to do it this way, right? What was that point for you? Did you have the self-awareness that I want to be working on the business and not in it?
See, it gradually happened. I think you start realizing it when people are able to manage work without you. That's first indication. Second is you find people who are doing things a little better than you. So then you let them do it. You take a step back. I think the third one is also a little bit of awareness, saying now, what is it that in this organization nobody's thinking about today? Can I be looking at that? So I think it starts there, and then slowly you'll get. But for you to think about what no one is thinking about, you need to be free from the day-to-day ops, or free from certain amount of work which would otherwise consume your time and bandwidth, right? So you have to slowly get there. We'll finish this podcast. I'm going to go to the office. I have already planned to research on something on GPT. I want to sort of relook at probably one, like I've done this already. I've fed the Philip Kotler marketing management book into GPT, and I've asked it to read. Now every Saturday I'm sitting and just dissecting one case study, which I looked at when I was in college, but I want to redo it today with a different approach. So I'm doing that. Now I've taken time out to do this, right? Which is something I'm doing to become better, which is not something anyone has to tell me. But then I'm looking at the organization also this way, that what can we do to get better? And I've always felt, if anyone is putting us out of business, it should be somebody from within the organization who goes out, starts something and puts us out of business. And we've had some examples of that, in one example probably of that in the last 2-3 years, of someone who's done well. So if you have that mindset, slowly you will figure how to get yourself out of, because it also gets boring. If I have to sit and do the same thing I did in 2017, it won't challenge and motivate me. How do you motivate yourself? By creating new obstructions, challenges, and sort of doing something out of it, right? There's a good quote in philosophy. It says, life has no meaning. You make up a meaning so that you can play the game. So I look at it a little like that.
You talked about philosophy, right? We were discussing this right before we started. Do you follow Naval? I think you seem like someone who would follow Naval, right?
Don't follow. I read his book, and I've watched this incredible audio extract around COVID time between him and Nasib Taleb, which talks about how to get rich. And that is a master's degree in a 3-hour podcast. It is incredible. So from a business perspective, that just opens your mind to a lot of things. And in fact, they're actually not even a podcast. They just put together series of tweets that Naval had made over the last 2-3 years, and they said, let's now discuss about each of them. Why did you say so? And Naval's, if you look at Naval's tweets, they're very brief, right? They don't really offer explanation. It's for you to deconstruct and decode. So it's quite interesting. So yeah, so I do a lot of that Naval stuff.
For anyone who's watching who doesn't know, Naval Ravikant is a modern day philosopher, I would say, and like a business genius. I got to know about him when I started listening to Tim Ferriss. So highly would recommend, like, this is actually the playbook for you to understand business. Go watch his episodes with Tim Ferriss. Go watch his podcast with Joe Rogan. Go read his tweet storm. read his book by the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. The same writer has a brilliant book on biology as well. And then go watch his 3-hour thing with Talib as well, right? Naval had this tweet about working like a lion, right? Where you don't, let's say, you don't be a cow where you eat grass every day. You work on, let's say, the 20% of activities that get you 80% of the results, right? If you are in, let's say, the 5 to 1 CR per month journey as an agency, right? What are those lion activities or what are those things that get you 80% of the results that you as a founder should be focusing on?
The I don't know if the work like a lion is something everybody can do. I think you have to learn how to work, and you have to learn what type of a worker you are. I think that's one very important step before that, right? I think people read fancy quotes and then they think they're that, and then they try, right? So it's a very clear thing about who you are versus who you want to be. I think people always are stuck in who you want to be, and you can see that like fall flat a lot. Like I've seen this. I have like a friend of mine that we keep saying he's a wantrepreneur. Right? Every year there's a new business, but they don't see the light of day after 365 days. He changes idea a lot. So you can get consumed in all of these things a lot. I think you break it down to say, if you're at 50 lakhs to 1 CR, right? What is bringing you that 50L to 1 CR? There should be clear service that actually is somewhere there's a validation or proof. If you're getting that from one transaction, it's an anomaly. You can't really say that that's how you're making your money, which means you have to break it down. So let's assume you have 10 clients and together you're doing about 50L to 1, whatever. You have to see what are you offering to these 10 clients and then see if you can double down and get the 11th and the 12th for the same service. Also, to a large extent, if you're an agency, it is about operation, right? So you learn one type of service really, really well, and then you learn to do it fast but with quality. So if you're able to nail that down, then you'll be able to sort of figure out how to optimize. Then at some level, you hit saturation. So you will know maybe it's at 1, maybe it's at 5, maybe it's at 15. So when you do, then you sort of package it and then say fair, or earlier also, depends on how you're looking at the business. Then you look at stabilizing that service and then move to the next.
How long did it take you to do that process of, let's say, having a good quality service, doing it fast and doing it well?
So fast, I think, is always a challenge in our line of work for various reasons. I think it never hits there. Quality, I think, initially I didn't know if we were doing quality, honestly. I still feel certain things we do, there's feedback, and creative work is so subjective that there's no clarity. On performance, I think it's been clear that we have been doing good work and there's good sort of validation from client, from people who know us, etc. So that's been clear. But on creative, it's always hard. I think about the first year and a half, we focused on social. It was working. Clients never left us because creative quality was bad, but we were working with the smaller clients. So they sort of left because businesses moved very rapidly in every quarter to quarter basis, etc. So we didn't realize that, which is also my thing we spoke about, right?
That
working with smaller clients.
You have to figure out if they'll grow or not grow.
Yeah.
If they're not growing, they'll cut you off.
Yeah.
First thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So I didn't spend time.
That's so relatable. No?
Yeah.
I didn't spend time choosing the right clients, right? But it's also part of the learning journey. You have to go through that. You're not going to otherwise learn how to work with a bigger client. Then from there on, I think it started to stabilize. So we realized that service A works, service B works.
Could you also talk about the timeline and the revenue of when the stabilization period happened?
So the first year we weren't doing much. We were doing about 30 lakhs, I think, as a collective, as a business.
A year?
Yeah, in the first year, which is from March to April, right? Then I think we jumped to 77. Throughout this period, I think we were doing only social media. Then performance came in, and then it moved to about I think around COVID time. Without top line, this is pure bottom line, we were about 1.2, 1.3 CR, I think, just about COVID. From there, we rapidly grew. So from there, we moved to 5. Then from 5, it became 9. Then it became 12. Then it really catapulted from there to become 32. And now we ended up at 64. So it's been 2x growth year on year, honestly. And I think a lot of it is also down to media, because now we look at the business a little differently. But that was sort of the journey. I think in the first 2 years, I feel it was more tactical social media that worked, and then performance came, but still tactical. Third or the fourth year, that intermediary onwards, I think we started to move up the channel and do more strategic brand campaigns, brand building, larger level activity. And from there, the numbers also became better. because you solve bigger problems, you get paid better. Simple, right? So that sort of started to happen. And from there, I think we experimented a little bit between year 5 and 7 to do a little bit of offline work and stuff. Failed miserably. I'm very happy to admit that. Because our DNA is so digital, it doesn't work. I also experimented for 9 months trying to launch PR as a service. Failed miserably too, because no DNA in the organization to respect PR. Not a problem of it working or not. So we tried these experiments, but still I think business grew. It didn't affect as much. Now I'm dabbling with influencer marketing. Like we do a lot of it through partners, but I'm thinking we do our own vertical. So I'm in the middle of that. But the core services have always been strong since year 2, 3. So the tactical stuff keeps the business afloat. It keeps the revenues going. So there's no problem. It gives you freedom to leverage and try these experiments. Some work, some don't. The things that really worked, really worked. In 2022, 1 to 2, we launched production for large scale ads. So we were doing production of 50 lakhs and above only. And we did quite a few campaigns. And I had no experience doing that before. I got one producer in from somewhere who had worked, and we had one before that who went on to do great work elsewhere. But we handled the transition, we built a team and structure, and we just scaled it. I think if you have sound logic, and I keep telling this to all entrepreneurs, if you're willing to work hard, you will figure things out. So you can do anything that you've never done before, and you will figure. It's all about mindset. It's all about putting in the effort. You will have some losses along the way. I call them micro losses. They're not real losses. They're like hurdles basically. Yeah. They're not really
part of the experiment.
Yeah, right. And then as long as you don't like die and you sort of are still alive to fix and redo things tomorrow. So that's just the thing. Do more. Try those. Figure out your baseline so that you can always, like I was saying, the 25% you put in the bank, that gives you incredible leverage to try new things.
And I'm guessing confidence also key. No problem.
Security that shit hits the fan, I'm still okay.
Yeah. Like I like people I think make work very like they take it too seriously. It's not like you're not a doctor operating on a patient, right? Yeah. It's not that critical that if a campaign goes wrong that somebody will die.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So why do you take that kind of pressure?
But I think brand managers treat it that way, right? They are
because it's their job, bro. That's why they treat it that way.
6 months mein mere ko appraisal nahi mila to your ass will be on the line.
No, if campaigns go south, they are out almost if it's a bigger campaign.
But when you sell these sort of new things that you have not done before, right? Like you mentioned, you started production, like a very high scale. How do you sell those projects? Like how do you convince the client to trust you?
2 ways. One is you have a client already working with you for something, so you give a new service. It's easy. Second is you go and find a new client for that service, but somebody who probably is not expecting, say, top of the pyramid work, but somewhere middle. You want to experiment your process, right? You want to see if you're doing it well. Then you can scale it up from there on and go after the others. So it's either or actually. You figure out what works best.
And from that journey of what you talked about, let's say when you were about at like 1 CR a year revenue, which is about, let's say 10 lakhs, right? So between, let's say 10 to like 25-ish. What was like the average order value or average retainer that you were charging?
Because we went from small to big, and through that journey, we retained some of them who were really small. Like we had some legacy brands who, like we worked on Corner House, for example, right? Because Bangalorean core team was Bangalore, we all loved it. They were paying us 1/11th of the biggest retainer. But you didn't mind keeping that because of relationship and you were trying to figure. Of course, long term it doesn't work, and it played out that way. But I think I would say roughly about between 1 and 2, because it was still, so there was one large client who was probably paying us 40% of the overall revenue, which
is not good.
Which is not good, but also is a sign that you can play in that market. And then the rest, probably 8 or 9 were giving us the rest 60%. Right, which is not ideal. Right. You want to balance it off. Later on, I think when we really went deep into working with larger brands and solving bigger challenges in the communication landscape, I had a different problem. I had 80% of my revenue coming from 3 clients, which is great because you were scaling and you were working with larger ones. So that, I think I've learned it after 4 years of how to manage the P&L well. So today, I think I would say if we have 10 clients, probably all of them would probably be 10%. They're equally blended out. Maybe here and there, maybe 8, maybe somebody's 12. That blend will happen. but you try and keep it to that. You want to have that ratio maintained.
You don't want like key man risk of one person eating up so much into your
Yeah,
revenue.
see, invariably it will. I think all agencies who have basically built themselves through some period of or time in their journey will have one or two outliers. It's always the case. You can't help it. It's just the name of the game. You just have to figure at what point are you able to control it, where there isn't enough, there's no instability, let's put it that way. And at the same time, you should try and acquire new clients too.
You should understand that it's an outlier and adjust the whole process to it, I would say, right?
Were you always in an acquisition phase from day one?
Yeah, in a way, I think not really. I think first 5 months, like on steroids. Like I think we got maybe 15 clients in 5 months.
Wow.
Right? But 3-4 of them were projects, so maybe 11 or something were there.
And this was all cold.
Yeah, all more or less. I don't know if there's anything that came. Maybe 1 or 2 came inbound. I'm not too sure, but majority were cold.
How much outbound would you have sent to get 15 as your client?
So there's a great story of how I signed Third Wave. So the Sushant, who's one of the co-founders, and I got his number from the barista at the CMH Road one, where I've said, so I think people are going and asking number of the founder or marketing, and they were not getting marketing's number for whatever reason. Probably they said don't give or whatever. So I said I'm here to sell a product. I want to get someone's number. They gave me Sushant's number, who's one of the co-founders. I called him. He didn't answer. Chased him for about a month. I called him 22 times. Somewhere in the 17th call, he did answer. So he said, yeah, sure, I'm happy, I want to chat, but maybe later, whatever. But he said, I'll call you back, didn't call back. So I still kept calling him. So I said, oh, I'm also in Koramangala. I wasn't.
The classic.
Yeah, I was in Indiranagar. Yeah. But I went. Yeah. And then I found out WeWork charges you for parking. It was a whole other nightmare. But anyway.
$100.
Yeah. But I did that and I went and met him. Funny story is somebody had come to interview. So I put him in the car.
Okay.
And he said, he lives in HSR. I said, great, I'm going to Koramangala, I'll drop you back.
Oh.
Like halfway through, right? So I took his interview from Indiranagar to Koramangala, dropped him. We didn't hire him, it didn't work out. But I then went and met Sushant, and it turns out he knew another friend of mine who was working out of there, and there were some commonalities. But he said, okay, cool, I like what you guys have. Go and meet the marketing person. So I went and met her, and we started working. But that was Herculean effort of, right? I was obsessed with saying that until somebody says no, and there's a little traditional old school sales mindset also, because my first job technically was a small little logistics startup where they did sea and air freight cargo. And when I joined that, the job they gave me is open Yellow Pages, look at a business, call and ask if they need the service. Like much like the annoying calls that we get from these insurance and loans and stuff like that. But I did that. And back then there was no TrueCaller and none of that stuff, so no one is catching us. But I just sat and spoke to businesses. First, I hated doing it because I didn't think I was good at it. Later on, when I started my first company, I had a friend who was helping us in sales. He used to work for a telesales company, so he knew how to do sales. So his name is Hari, so he would do this very nicely, like hi, like I'm Hari, and then he would take a pause, and then he would start selling what he is selling. So I learned some cues like that, so which helped probably, and then I just used it, I guess. So that was sort of that journey which I went on. So there is no answer coming back to how much you persist or how many cold calls you do. Just have to do what it takes.
Doing what it takes.
When you were pursuing Third Wave, were they like a large
no, they had 2
organization
outlets
already? Okay.
They had 2 outlets, but I think they were trying to raise money, and they had, I think, and they were trying to scale to a third, HSR. So there was CMH, there was Koramangala, and then there was HSR. And then after that, I think the rest of the things happened.
I think a common thread that I'm noticing across everything that you're saying is people, right? Like you also mentioned that Prateek has been with you from day one. And
no, Prateek wasn't. Prateek bounced in 3 months, and then he came back 7 years later. Yeah. But okay. That's a different story.
I thought he was. But you mentioned that there are a lot of people who've been with you from quite early on.
Yeah, I think there's been 2 people I think who are still there, who were there in the founding team. There are about 3 other people who joined somewhere midway, and they've been there for maybe half the journey, 4 years. But apart from that, I think people have spent 1 year, 2 years, a combination between that. Maybe there were a couple of people who spent 3. But typically, I think we have predominantly been a young organization filled with millennials or Gen Z. most likely in their 20s they jump a lot of jobs, because that's a way to learn about themselves, that's a way to also get a decent pay hike and stuff like that. So we haven't really, to be honest, retained as much. I've also seen this trend where post 30 you tend to become a little bit more stable, and then you just tend to stay in an organization. So the people that we have hired post that age sort of bracket, they tend to stay, they've been here. But otherwise, I think it's hard. I wouldn't say that a lot of people have stayed, but some key people have stayed, which has helped.
How much time do you generally invest? Maybe not now, maybe like when you were 2-3 years into this, how much time went into hiring? Because I just get so frustrated, like talking to people, selling that vision. And so is there like no way around it?
I don't know. I don't know what other people's hiring method has been, but I am an obsessive hiring person, which means I will go through 7,500 interviews before I hire a person. Right? This is the early days. Also, I think hiring is a skill which is developed over time. So initially it's a guesswork. You have to learn from the patterns. I had this quote that I sort of embodied, which is hire fast, fire faster. So as brutal as it sounds, as a business, I felt that like I am obligated to the business as to running its P&L. So if someone's in the system and it's not working out, and if you feel there is no way to get around it, the best thing you can do for that person and for the organization is to let that person go fast. So we did a lot of that until maybe COVID and after. And then some of the senior people said, I think it's too harsh, you shouldn't. I said, okay, cool. Then we didn't for a while. And I also felt because we are a young organization, not enough people have been managers for a very long time. Not enough people have gone through journeys of hiring, growing a person, seeing out the outcome, etc. So it becomes challenging. Also, I think today's generation is far more digital than ever, as a function of which you don't have as much social skills as probably people had maybe a few years earlier before us. And as a function, I think that selection process is a little tricky. So you have to go through as many CVs as possible. For me, hiring for people who are not creative or not strategists has been hard. Like if you're hiring for pure client servicing, if you're hiring someone in finance, someone in HR.
It's a lot more objective.
Yeah, that has been harder than creative. Creative is easy because you look at the portfolio, you know the level of capability, and then you take a call. Planners also use more or less from the way they solve a problem or look at a solution architecture, you sort of know how good they are. And then it's just about how they operate. But the people skill actually is the hardest, and that's the most critical thing in our line of work. So unless they're in the system and spend about 90 days, you can't judge it.
How do you have like an extensive hiring process now?
No, not really. I think we experimented. We had experimental hiring process. Let's put it that way, right? We tried different things on what works. Now I think we have a stable senior HR team, and they're sort of handling it all together. But we try to keep it simple, which is somebody applies. We try to see what do they have a portfolio attached with it, which gives an understanding of what they do, what they don't. There's generally a HR round, which translates into a technical round with the hiring manager. And then there's probably somebody who's a departmental head, or sometimes it's me. We do a final check to see if everything is aligning. HR is looking for, I think, again comes down to this, right? HR looks for all HR related checkpoints. The hiring manager looks for work related. And then I'm typically, or the head of the department is looking at personality and the other stuff. So you try to fit those in. Throwing in a personality round as a small assignment in the process makes a lot of difference. Right. You get to know what the archetype is.
I have started doing this. Is that test, no?
16 personalities?
Yeah. I started doing that to like better fit them into, okay, like would they work in this area?
Yeah, absolutely.
That has been quite helpful. How do you look at sort of salaries, right? Because another challenge that I personally have had, especially in like the video editing / creative space, right, is that a lot of people are really young, right? Especially after COVID and this comeuppance of like AVTV and a lot of these creators having these courses, right? That I know you're like a very anti-course person, but people having video editing courses, the market is flooded with so much creative talent. And I find often a lot of it is very, very entitled. Right? They're like, no, I'm 20 years old, and if I'm not getting like
I want 60,000 salary.
Yeah, no, 1 lakh, 1.5 lakhs a month, and like it's not. So as a successful agency owner, like I would love to know your thoughts on both sides of the process of how do you price looking at the business, being a business owner, and also how do you think of, let's say, as someone who's wanting to learn in an agency and maybe like skip every 2 years or move every 2 years, what should the likely thought process there be for like consistent growth?
You mean for people or for the agency?
Well, let's start off with the agency.
Yeah. See, you, like I said, the 50, 25, 25, if you have as a rule, then you try to make everything run within that. Right. So then you let the heads of department also know that this is the model. And then they also are aware that A client is paying X, and as a result, a B resource can't be afforded for Y. Like you need to figure out a different thing. So you make them part of the process. See, the market is a market is a market. So if you're getting money from a source, if someone's willing to pay a 20-year-old a lakh because they're good or because that is their knowledge of that skill and they're willing to bench that as the price, then that's the case. And then if they're able to find it, great, good for them. And I think you should encourage them to ask for more. That's fine. There are realities of your business, of how much you can afford. And then you should also be very clear that this is our sort of capability. And then speak to more people till you find a right fit. Which is why I said sometimes you need to hire for 7,500 profiles or look at least that many CVs till you find somebody, because it sometimes does take that time, right? What you should do is be clear of your business model. Are you solving for the biggest brands and the biggest problems, or are you more tactical, or are you more lower funnel or lower in the pyramid, so working with smaller businesses? You will need to reverse engineer your retainers or your commercials or your project fees and work backwards with the type of talent you're going to work with. That's very important.
Right.
So if you have resources that are solving very, very large award-winning type of work, but then your clients are all your smaller guys, it's not going to work, right? So you need to be clear about that. And I think that is on the founder to figure where how much you're in and how much you're out is. You should also have a nice understanding of the team structure required to make account or make your service work. So like I've seen social media agencies that probably work with a 3-member team, some work with a 7-member team, different models, both work. You just need to figure what is your model and then find people according to that. And with regards to growth, I think, that's a function of how you set growth in the organization. I know a lot of people who come work with us or work with other agencies because the type of work is more gratifying than the pay of the work. So a lot of people are married to advertising for that matter, right? Because they love the industry and they can't even think of going and working with a single brand, single entity where the work is going to be mundane and every day is the same thing. So I think there are people for all types of companies, all types of services. You just need to find yours.
Oh, that makes sense. I think another thing that has been very insightful talking to you is that like agency is a very broad term and there are so many different types of business models within the agency that I have not really thought about. That's something that I would be looking into a lot more.
You don't have to look into it, by the way. You can also be ignorance is bliss. You might be able to scale better if you don't know what's there.
Right.
Honestly,
is it difficult at the scale that you are, which just seems unfathomable to me right now, to keep on going? Like, what's your reason to like wake up every day? Don't you feel like you would have fucking made it, man?
no. I mean, I genuinely think I will work till I physically can, till maybe 70, 80. My grandfathers lived till 90s, so I hope I will also. I want to see what the world is like then. So I want to work till my 80s, honestly. I would like it, and then see after that. But I guess you can't think, like you can't have small goals, and I think journey is the reward. It's a great quote popularized by Steve Jobs, but I think it's from somebody else. But that's a great sort of way to look at it. So I don't look at there is no end. There is no a day when we I climb the mountain and then I like scream from there saying I've made it. That's never going to happen.
Right.
So I think every day is part and parcel of the life you're living and the business and every day sort of achieving a certain goal, and then you continue that the following day. It never ends. I think of it that way. It's just foolish to think about it and say that it's not like a sport or anything else where you have to retire, right, at a defined age. It's very late. So if not this business, I might be doing some other business. Right. So I look at it in that lens.
Talking about social media, right? Since we are a lot in the content space, there's a very drastic difference between making content and making the business that's behind the content. Now that you have a podcast, and we were talking about how like you don't watch the episodes, or you're hey, I will do the thing, but then not obsess too much over the back end of it.
I won't watch this one either, by the way.
No, good for us. But what are your sort of thoughts around content and like the business of content?
Today, what is content is what used to be in some form journalism, some form publishing, some form advertising, art in terms of films, etc. I think it's all blended in and it's called content. So there are different angles and sides to content. You need to figure again what are you particularly talking about, right? I think some people, for example, call what we do as digital marketing. Some call it advertising. Some say social media agency. Some say content agency. Like it's different words that all mean the same. So I think that is become super broad. And I think you might be talking about one thing in content. I might be talking about something else. So unless we get very, very specific, it's very hard to get into the same point.
What we were trying to mean is also video content specifically.
Okay.
How do you think that will evolve?
See, in 2017, in our team of 11 people, we had 2 videographers who could also edit. In 2017, because I feel video content was a moat. Like you just had to. So if you created a scope of say 10 deliverables a month, invariably minimum of 2 was video content for us in 2017. Because I looked at it that lens and it did better in terms of on platform. And today you're looking at everything being vertical video, which is no brainer because I think everybody is now, I mean, because of TikTok and where the world is, etc. I think it's gone in that direction. So when IGTV launched, I made a small video somewhere it's there, which wherein I said it will not work because human beings are very wired to looking at long form content horizontally, and I don't see us settling for vertical. It's how the brain works. And I think even now, if you look at vertical content, it is still very much in the micro content space. Yeah. It's not scaled. I don't think anyone's making 15-minute or 20-minute vertical content.
Actually, there is a huge market. They talk about it on My First Million in Korea, where they are making TV shows but vertical. And I've gone down the rabbit hole recently.
But the episodes are small.
It's like 7 to 15 minutes, I would say. So not as long as normal TV shows, which are like 25, 30 minutes. I actually went down this rabbit hole, and this works really well for what I call like the underbelly content, right? So it could be like romance or horror or things that are
very cliche also.
Inherently like very attention grabbing, right? You don't have to do much.
Far East is crazy.
Sorry?
Far East is crazy, I'm saying, in terms of how they innovate. But, even still in the macro mathematical world of content, that is still micro, right? Versus a Martin Scorsese film, which is a 3-hour film. So I think I feel that threshold is increasing from a 15 seconds to 15 minutes. I think we've come a long way. What I'm really curious to see is if that can go to 20, 25, 30 and more.
It'll be very sad if it does.
Because I just feel you're not using the entire capability of the visual medium to actually explore. But I think we're also in a world where people are trying to create unique USPs or differentiation because that creates value in economic terms. So I think we are in that stage in the world, right? So I'm not a super big fan of the volume of reels that come on my feed. I think it starts to get annoying, honestly. I am also culprit because I put out so much of podcast content that also could be looked at that way. But I think it's an interesting phase we're in where next generation, I think, is going to grow up on vertical first. Like, I don't know how you guys look at it, but when I was in college, was watching minimum of 3 films a week. Either I would download them or I would go to theater.
TV shows or movies,
right? Or TV shows, right? So if you look at all the popular pop culture TV shows which were really tough to consume, like for example, Breaking Bad is not easy. It's a slow burn. You have to get into it, right? The Wire, if you've ever heard of the show, it's an incredible show, but it's very, very hard to watch through. Then there's Mad Men, which I think is one of the well-written shows of all time. By the way, anyone in advertising, if you want to have a career, watch that show. That is one piece of advice I can give you. It just circumvents so much learning for everybody. So it's there's a beautiful episode of, I think, where a junior, an executive is being given walkthrough through the agency. They say, hey, this is servicing, this is creative, this is media, this is finance, blah, blah. Funny thing is, even today, that holds good. That structure is still the same. So just a note on Mad Men. But yeah, but I think content as a whole, I think we are going through that journey where it is being consumed differently. So it's interesting to see where it will play out. But I would be very surprised if statics from a social media lens can be priced individually. I think they'll be given away for free, is my feeling is. I think everybody doing social media will inherently need to learn video production and the craft of writing scripts or smaller micro
format.
content.
Right.
Yeah, small form, because large you're not going to be able to do. At least not now. But maybe the bigger production houses will sell a series of 10 episodes that'll come out on social.
Right.
There's this page, right? Brooklyn Coffee Shop.
Yes, I know this
Right?
very well.
Yeah. So that's a very interesting concept. But now a lot of people are saying we'll do that for a brand. Even in that, I have a certain slight problem, because that is like a SNL sketch. Essentially, if you look at it.
Do things like this convert? Like, are they economically viable?
So I don't think they're doing it. So if any brand goes down that path, that is not being done for sales, for example. It's not being done for performance. It's done for brand building. I would think so. You could maybe use that clip from somewhere to drive a performance conversation, but you wouldn't produce something like that at that scale. At least it's not been done. You could maybe take a punt on it and try. There's no harm in it, honestly. Now that I'm thinking of it, maybe we should give it a shot at our end.
Yeah, you should.
That's the only way to. Yeah, I would cite you for inspiration when it does come out. But I think something like that could be attempted. But I would typically think they're doing it to build brand.
Actually, I have a lot of examples like this. There is something called there's a board game company called The Egg Official. I might be getting the name a little wrong.
Oh, is it a British company?
Yeah. So they make games. And their whole strategy is based around content. They have somebody in-house doing the content. Brilliant content. Like, I've not seen another company do content as well as them. It's about the company making and releasing games. That's about the content, if I had to summarize. Something that I wish to do if I had a brand. It's that good.
Yeah. The only problem with these things is like the key man risk, right? You have one creator who's really good. Someone has started F.Inc., right? Founders Inc. So it's like a West Coast thing, huge founder, really successful. He just wanted a collective where people could come and just like do things, right? Before this, there was Build Space by Farza. He's a Pakistani entrepreneur, genius guy. He started this collective where people just come and every cohort, they just make things. I still don't understand how that works. He stopped doing it. He found one creator who was on the rise. And he said, hey, you have my brand, you have resources, just like go bonkers with it. And he built like I think close to 1 million subscriber or 1 million follower Instagram page and a huge community, like extremely high recall. I was just looking at some gym recently where they had one girl or two girls who were just making relatable content, 80,000 followers, right? And clearly really high engagement, really high reach. They're probably reaching out to maybe 10 to 15 million accounts a month, right? Which for that person is a big deal. I think New Me Asia has done something really well in this space where they were just taking like a bunch of creators, made content. Do you know Rent Mojo? They're doing great stuff on Instagram with their, they'll go up to tenants and be like, how much do you pay rent? It's the same sort of spin-off that the US guy had of like, where do you live? And then they'll take them around the house, right? A lot of brands have done really well in this space. We've talked about it on the show. So Schmooze, do you know Schmooze? The meme dating app. They have more than, I think, close to 5 million downloads. And I might be wrong here, but they don't run a lot of ads. It's purely based on their content, which is just like incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a couple of their ads, but it's like nowhere close to, it did not even like push the trigger to just even check them out.
To be fair, we're not the audience and we don't know backend numbers, so we're not sure. But at least we're really impressed with the content that's happening there.
So I have a question. You cited a lot of the references, right, that Indian brands are doing. Have you seen something similar from Western brand?
Most likely. Most likely what we see in India, right? Like even if you take AVTV, for example, everyone that looks at AVTV, they're like, oh, they're doing great work. And I'm not doubting it. I actually worked with AVTV a little bit when they were starting out. No doubt there, right? But I wouldn't say that their ideas are entirely original. like they did the one video where they talked about tiers of salary, right? I distinctly remember because I have a close friend who lives in DD only. He was raving about the video, and I was like, Johnny Harris did this video like 2 months ago, right? Exact video, same thumbnail also. So I think most, and again, like still like an artist, right? That's all fine, but a lot of the inspiration that we see from like great Indian content generally comes from Western content. That's what we've, at least in our sort of sphere of existence.
Because that has been the most experimented and verified format.
Correct.
It's like they experiment and sort of verify it, and that is somewhere like incorporated
Work
into
there, so
our
it'll also work here types.
So I mean, I have my thoughts on this, right? Which is, I also understand market opportunity and why people do it. Like Peter Thiel has his book, right, 0 to 1. Talks about two business models: there's 0 to 1 or there's 1 to 1, right? There's maybe an Uber which is 0 to 1, and there's an Ola which is 1 to 1. Now,
Wait, what do you mean?
A 0 to 1 is an original framework. A 1 to 1 is a copy of a framework which works, right? So the problem I have with advertising and what's happening in advertising is, what is creativity, right? Which is, creativity is something that could be inspired, could be borrowed, because it's not always original thinking, but then it feels original. Like you will not go and watch any of these films and then say that, oh, I felt like the other film we watched 2 years back. So when you do that, same thing with advertising, right? Because what is the point of advertising? To get attention and then to communicate a message. I feel creativity is eroding, and it comes back to that conversation about content and creativity, which is, a lot of people today put out content and think that's marketing. It is. I'm not saying no, because you would have a lot of similar formats of ads that go out and we all see it, but the communication in it has to be at some level unique to your own brand personality, which is where I think today a lot of it's all about volume. When you're doing things fast, you can't be creative at all times, because your creativity comes at its own sort of pace, and not saying it can't be, it can, but it's tougher. So that's what's happening in today's world, where everything is a function of reference and then it's done fast. The same thing is plaguing Bollywood as well.
Yeah.
Right. Anurag Kashyap keeps talking about it, right? Like a conversation about a new film starts with someone saying, this is like that film. Then and there it breaks.
Yeah.
Like we had Sky Force, right? What is it?
Skyfall.
And something else, Fighter.
Skyforce.
And Fighter, which made you feel like Top Gun or cheaper knockoffs of Top Gun. Yeah. But those are all like the realities. I think creative business is also becoming like that, where it's a lot of people are taking inspiration. Like someone pitched Brooklyn Coffee Shop to me, somebody from outside, and then for a brand that we are working with, and that's exactly what I asked. What is unique about the brand? Like years ago, I was pitching to Puma, okay? I was in their room and I presented an idea. It was an original idea only, but it didn't fit the brand filter. So the brand manager asked me something. She asked, does this idea work for Adidas?
Yeah, can you switch out the logos and it?
Yeah. So, and I didn't say anything. And she said, if it does, then it's not for Puma.
Oh,
this is a very interesting concept. Like the logo and the branding should not be the only thing that tells you that, hey, this ad is from this brand.
So that is, I think, see, this is where I think collectively in the industry there isn't enough knowledge at the lower ends of the pyramid, people starting out, which is why it's important for you to work with somebody who's done it, or you figure out a way to learn and upskill yourself to then figure out a way to work. I spent a lot of my initial 3 years going out and meeting people from these different agencies and learning their processes and learning how they look at it. And then I worked with people as well, which is what helped me to look at the business in the way I am.
Were people open to like share that information? Because
I think they have to.
I know you are very like positive sum game type of person, but I find a lot of people are very like gatekeeping about.
Of course, I think I don't know if they have their own reasons. Some people are insecure. Some people think it's knowledge is earned and not to be shared freely. I think there's a different objective or point of view that people have. But if you win, even if that's the case, if you sit down with somebody and win someone's trust over time, they will tell you how to do things. And you can learn from it. But all that is inconsequential, because now you have GPT, which you can like literally put down what you want and it will school you and teach you what you need to learn. And as is, I think internet was the first stage of democratizing knowledge where it is available. Now there's another layer, and there's so many people creating content also. This is another thing I keep telling people: consume as much content from different people as you can. Over a period of time, based on how frequently you consume, it'll all form a complete picture. Initially, it's like a puzzle. you learn something that goes in the lower end and the right, then you learn something and goes in the left, then something. Eventually, it all comes together like a full picture. So I think that you need to do, and then you will learn that there are layers to that picture also, right? There's one layer of puzzle under that, then 2 layers above that. It's like that last scene from Interstellar. It's like that 5th dimension reality you're in.
Yeah.
Knowledge is like that. You need to sort of figure out what works for you and how you sort of keep consuming and upskilling.
I watched a bunch of his interviews, and the one pattern
Interviews,
that
huh?
Sorry,
Podcasts.
My bad,
Interviews.
podcast.
Reduce me down to an anchor.
No question. Anchor also far out.
No, podcast. And the one thing that I noticed was you don't swear, right? But the only time that I've seen you swear...
I swear a lot, actually. I'm being
Or at
very
least-
think... No, I think...
That's what I said
in
also.
the podcast, at least, I didn't see you swear.
So my mom...
3-4 episodes.
My mom
there.
watches my podcast. I learned after a few episodes. And then she said...
Why are you swearing so much?
Yeah, she said that. She said, why are you using these words?
Right.
So then I try to control a little bit.
Parliamentary words.
Yeah.
But at least in the episodes that I saw, the only time that you were swearing was around this idea that when you book a call with someone who's sort of like a couple steps ahead of you, right? And then they charge you money for it.
Oh, fuck yes. My God. Man, this, like, I know the guy also. I'll tell you guys off screen who that is. But, so this friend of mine did it. He booked a call with someone because he wanted to learn or ask question. He sent a link and 15-minute call is chargeable.
Wow.
Right? So I was like, fucking douchebag. Like, my first reaction was that.
Yeah.
Right? And he's not some really big accomplished, he's probably, I think, the same age as my friend, probably younger than me. I don't think his achievements are, to be honest, in that. And this all happens with the guys, unfortunately, in corporate, who are getting some amount of fame and recognition, and then they think and people who are in transition between having worked in a large corporate to then becoming entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, that phase they get into this. So I personally can't relate with that. I have a fundamental problem. If someone's reaching out for help or whatever it is, and then you're charging them for that 15 minutes of the time, I mean, like preying on the weak is how I look at it. So that still irks me. So
Right. Is that also the reason why you don't like the course business?
Who in the world has become better after a course? Like, I have a lot of these coaches who work with us, by the way, for scaling ads and doing it. I don't mind doing that as a business, because anyone who comes to us, as long as it's not politics, I have no, and maybe drugs and stuff that is banned by law, I have no problem in serving them, right? We do that. So it's not a hypocritical stance. I just think there's a division between my personal interest versus what the company does. They're two different things. But I genuinely don't believe that courses actually do anything for... It nudges you in the right direction. It gives you some value, no doubt. But I feel anything today that has been itemized and sold is available for free on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a function of you being a seeker and not. And I have been that. And I keep saying that I watched YouTube shows of Gary Vee and Stephen Bartlett. I've been following him from the time when he had maybe 3,000 subscribers. And back to Martin Sorrell's interviews and his material about how he built WPP. Everything is out there. It's open source. So you don't need to pay for anything. So, I get why people are doing, and as somebody who hated the education system, and by someone who sits and curses about the fact that the school system has actually failed every entrepreneur in the country and in the world. I don't think, and not just entrepreneurs, but even as extension, if you look at people who have been musicians, people who have been athletes, like which athlete today in the country can say, I played for the country because my school gave me the resources and the facilities? Nobody. Everyone went to a private academy to a different coach. Most people who top exams go to tuitions. So education system doesn't work, right? I think that's a reality of things. Now, as an extension of that, in the corporate world now, after doing all of that education and spending tons of money, you're still paying for courses, like in your 20s or 30s, to learn and become better. So I have a fundamental problem with that thought process and how in society, like earlier you were going to school because your parents paid for it. Now you're paying for it. And like I do it once in a while, right? Like a lot of these digital marketing gurus who release like courses and ebooks and stuff. And I like, if I see it $1,000, $500, I'll pay. I don't care. I want to see what it is. Typically I scan through it and then I say, shit, put it in the trash. Because nothing is insightful. Nothing is like different and new. And I think there's more material that you can learn from on Twitter than stuff that you get on these courses.
And ironically, we hire like I've hired a bunch of people from these, or tried to hire a bunch of people from these creative courses. Most of the people that come out and have done well, right? Like let's say good editors or good thumbnail designers or whatever, were good before the course also. Like the course was not the catalyst that made them good.
Yeah.
They were already good. The course just sort of got them in the right circles to be hired.
Yeah.
So it was more of like access to opportunity for them than like actual learning.
Yeah, but having said that, there are some courses, to be honest, that do give you a sort of a leverage and advantage because it circumvents time that you would spend otherwise learning. Like for example, I think the GrowthX course on growth marketing is fabulous. You don't often get opportunity to do that in your job, but you can. It's not impossible, but typically I think if you maybe you could learn that if you have a side hustle and spend 3 hours consulting on a small business on the side who lets you run ads and learn things, etc. And as long as you're able to do half decent job for them, you'll learn that kind of work. But sure, a course will help you put structure to things, right? Today I think GPT is eradicated that, to be very honest, in a lot of ways, right? But that sort of a course somewhere to somebody could be useful. But like I have fundamental problem if people are teaching you how to do business through courses. You can't create that. People are teaching sport, some cases, I don't know how, never happens. So it's like being in a zoo. It's not the jungle. So my problem comes from there. But if your course is very dynamic and you're taking people out, and like if you're doing a small cohort but then you're doing very high involvement and then
Right.
like actually hands-on meeting them, physical, etc., then I think there's a lot of merit value which I think could be extracted. But yeah, fundamentally my problem comes from the kind of courses which are just selling you basics. It's funny I say that. There's an episode that just came about someone selling a course who's on my podcast, but yeah.
What do you think you're doing differently? Like, I'm sure in your 8 years, you would have seen other agencies start and end and die and all of that. What do you think you have done differently that has gotten you so far? And
I think I like to believe it's relentless hard work and perseverance. It's very simple. Everyone can do it.
Yeah. It's just sticking to it for that long and being able to do it every day.
do you not get SOS? Like SOS to me, I know for you it's a snake oil salesman. I found that very funny. But to me, SOS is shiny object syndrome, right? Oh, something not working for 3 months, let's pivot, do something else. Like, how do you avoid that?
Luckily, nothing has not worked for 3 months. So, not had that problem. I don't know, man. I mean, like, I think I don't have too many distractions because I don't know what else is out there that I could do which could be better use of my time. Let's put it that way. I also don't know too many things I'm that passionate about. I think sport I'm little tinkering now. Weekends I'm working on this other business which is a little gratifying and we're doing, but that's seasonal. It's something that we can figure, and like I can manage the bandwidth with what we have. So I'm finding fun with doing that, but that's not for money either. That's because I just love sport. So I don't know if there's anything that I could do. Maybe I could, go into a cave, learn everything about trading for 2 years, come back and maybe do that. I think I'll have a flair for it. But I could do that at any point in time. My stock market's not going to disappear tomorrow. So I'm very clear about that. So I think less distractions in general. I think I've made my mind believe there's nothing else out for me. So, and I don't like to start. I mean, I've done this a lot of my life where I've started things and left it without completing. This is one of those things I don't want to do. So I want to see it out.
What are like your go-to podcasts?
So I don't have, so I listen to a lot of talk sport because I love football in general and what's happening in that world. I watched one particular show of Simon Jordan and what's the other guy, the instigator, forgot his name, doesn't matter. But I watched that one particular show. I get my daily gossip of sport, what's happening in British football. I'm a huge Man United fan, so that's important to me. I listen to, if I missed a IPL game, I try and watch what Crickbuzz is talking about it. Bogle and Joy Bhattacharya, whoever else, right now. It's in the season, right? I listen to Stick to Football. It's my favorite football podcast. I listen to Club Prairie Fire, which is my favorite cricket podcast. I listen to both of these things. Over and above, my algorithm spits stuff to me. Like I just came across a Rory Sutherland interview with somebody who They're talking about changing landscape of advertising, etc. So I've bookmarked it. I'm watching. So like I have like 15 podcasts that are saved by category across genre that I have to at some point watch. If I'm not doing anything and I'm watching live sport, like I have my IPL or football on in my car when I'm driving, and I'm listening to the audio and I'm watching it. It's like getting peaks of it. So I'm consistently, my screen is on these days for something or the other, which I like, I'm constantly learning stuff. So
Which
that
is
helps.
great because this is not related to your job, I feel.
Yeah.
Like if you like distraction.
The advertising stuff is, a lot of the advertising stuff is correlated to my, like I have a lot of, like there's a podcast, not podcast, an interview of MasterCard CEO with WPP CEO about, not CEO, CTO about how AI will impact advertising. I mean, everyone wants to give Gyan on that right now. I'm just trying to see how unique is a Gyan. Like I'm save that up. I'm going to listen to it maybe on the way out. So I'll do stuff like that. So
You don't listen to like business podcasts? Like founder podcasts?
I mean, I've done a lot of that in the early days. I'm out of it now. So
I feel like business podcast for you feels like SOS, snake oil salesman.
No, I mean, not really. I think everyone founder story is all interesting. If it's a founder I'm curious about, I would. But somehow it doesn't interest me as much because
You've gone through it so much that
Yeah.
like pata hai sab. There won't be barely anything new that I
yeah,
will.
right. There's a lot of adversity stories I've heard. A lot of genius stories I've heard. Like I've scaled it, so now it's not that exciting. It's more of what is someone doing now would be very interesting. Like that is something that I'm curious about.
Oh, that makes sense. I think we're close to wrapping up. So, if what would your advice be to someone who is at whatever, let's say, at that sort of year 1, year 2 place where you were, right, where they're close to between, let's say, 5 to 10 lakhs a month that they're doing, and they want to scale this further. What's like the 1 or 2 main things that they should focus on?
I think people won't like it. Take Narayan Murthy's advice. People will laugh at it, will say all of that. It is fucking gold dust.
Right.
Like he's real about it. There is like people, I like it's just so simple, right? If you do 100 push-ups a day, you will have better body definition than someone who does no push-ups a day. So if you work 14 hours a day, as said, you will be better than somebody who works 7 hours a day or 9 hours a day or whatever, right? Unless you're competing against absolute genius, which are very few. So the chances are you will be better than the collective average. The talk of hard work, it puts people off because I think that's just generally lazy people who have no intention to sort of break out of the obscurity race. So I think people get very comfortable staying there, and then they want to pull people down there, right? So if anyone who talks about hard work is to be cancelled and to be said. So I would say, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you have no choice but to work hard, or else you will be eaten. So you have to sort of realize that to be an anomaly, you have to act like one. So you have to when everyone zigs, you have to zag. So you have to do all of that, and also go back to the basics of what everyone is doing. And only way you can do that is if you put incremental amount of effort. So just work hard. Whatever you're doing, work hard.
And also, like, building an agency is still a service business. Like, you can't escape from work because like that's your bread and butter day in and day out. There's no way out, I would say.
Of course. And it's also down to my personality. Sometimes my answer may not be to the point of what you guys want, because I don't microanalyze things. I am very gut driven. So if there has been, for example, a mistake on the account, for example, hypothetically, and that's caused a loss, I know what the mistake was and I don't overanalyze it. I just know it. Then you're looking for that similar instance, or you're guarding or creating a process against it. Right. Now, the only way you get there is if you've lived out enough scenarios in life. And the only way to live out those scenarios is by doing a lot of hard work and doing more in less time. So if you do 14 hours a day, right? Is that what he said, or 18?
14.
Okay. 14.
So I think it was 100-hour work week or something.
There's the same thesis, which is if you do 14 hours of work over 9 hours, then you're getting extra 5 every day, which adds up to 6 into 5 is 30. That's
70-hour work week. So 10 hours a day if you're working 7 days.
Great, right? So if you do 10, or even if you don't do 10, like I hate doing 7 days of work.
Yeah.
I'm very clear, I will only do 6 days of work.
Right.
But in those 6 days, I have no problem putting in 11 or 12 hours. That's just how I'm wired. And that's just a state of mind. You don't need to be in office in front of a system to work. Like that's one of the reasons why I consume podcasts, because while driving, you're learning, you're listening to something, right? So it's just about the mindset that you have. So if you are putting that kind of effort and doing 4 hours more than the average Joe, you are then you're learning, or you're fast tracking the learnings by those 4 hours every day. And that compounds. So you're better. So in 5 years, you're better than somebody who's running an agency for 10 years because you did more in 5 years than he did in 10.
Yeah.
So you have to think about it that way. And I think that will really help. So doing more and figuring out what your strengths are. Oh yeah, this is another thing. I think someone asked me this long back and the answer came out very naturally. He said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, I want to have 5 times the strengths that I have today. And I want to eradicate all of my weaknesses by 5 times, if that makes any sense. So that will only happen again if you're doing a lot and then optimizing yourself.
Did you have any co-founders at Wirality?
No, I had one person who helped me start it. He left in 3 months. Then I had a friend who taught me to do ads and stuff, who was at a larger holding company. He came and worked with us for about 9 months, but he didn't enjoy entrepreneurship, so he left. But otherwise, no.
Have you ever tried having partners?
I have. I've got people in, and I've said you can have minority equity to do something, but I think it's too late. I think I've scaled the business for so long on my own. I don't think I need a partner anymore. I just think that they will always be slow than me because I've just catapulted and learned so much. I've done founder things alone for 8 years. It's like, I think when you're a single parent and then if you have already have a child that's graduated, you don't need to find a partner because you have kids. You need to find a partner for other reasons. So I think that's where I am.
Do you think you would be at like a different place if you had a co-founder?
I've never thought about it. I don't know. Maybe, sure, you will be in a different place for sure.
That's sure.
But I don't know if it will be good or bad.
Good or bad,
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it'll be good only. I mean, I'm good at co-creating. I like that. But yeah, I think the speed at which you can make decisions when you're on your own is a superpower. So that really helps.
No, that makes sense.
Cool.
I think that's about it.
Yeah,
I would love to do like a part 2 to this.
Absolutely. Please.
Sometime down the line where we have
Yeah.
graduated to the next set of questions.
Oh, sure.
And we want to pick your brain on.
I hope my answers were enough fulfilling.
Super helpful.
Super helpful.
I'm already thinking of doing like a follow-up episode to this next week where we digest this and then we just discuss what we learned and how we're going to apply it.
Sure.
I was thinking, as you were answering, I was like, oh, clip content. Isko clip karo.
Sometimes I'm in that position when I'm hosting people, but this is a good refreshing change because I don't have to think too much at all. Sometimes I have to when you host somebody, they are the host. I mean, they are the guest, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to give, everything starts from making them feel right. They're the hero. People are coming to watch them, not you. It's a bit of a challenge. So it's a good change for me. I liked it.
Oh.
Yeah. It's only the third podcast I've done. So it's great. Apart from mine.
I've seen more of your podcast.
I did seen one that you did 4 years ago with someone, Aman? No.
Anvay.
Yes, I guess.
Right.
Anvay.
That was an online one.
No, that was offline only.
Oh, Akash. That was
Akash,
against the odds.
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Long ago.
I saw Akash,
Yeah, I've seen Anvay.
That's my first one. And
Anvay's
Anvay was
one,
the second one. That's it. This is the third.
Oh.
We're
We are
flattered.
happy.
But no, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
And I have a special place in my heart for people who believe that the world is a positive sum game. Because I think, do you think you're a teacher at heart?
No, fuck. I hate teaching.
You hate teaching?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Because I've met a lot of people who feel this way who are teachers at heart. Right? They don't mind just like sharing information.
So I think if everyone can learn and grow, it's beneficial to everybody else. So I think information shouldn't be curtailed and they should be shared freely for that purpose. And I learned everything for free. I learned everything from open source. So what right does it give me to keep that curtailed? So, which is why I said, right, people who leave us, start rival organization competing with us, I'm like super happy. Great. Please do. It's good. It's a good sign of internal culture. So I've always been that way. I don't like to teach, but I don't know if I will never teach other than if it's a sport. And that's not teaching, that's coaching. So it's
You will coach but never teach.
yeah. I did that for a while. So I might go back to it at some point.
But thank you so much, man.
Thank you so
great
much for being here. Thank you for being so patient with us also.
It's fine. Hardly a sweat.